Hey babies, what's up? What's up? What's up? Hey babies. Hi everyone. Happy Monday. What's up, everybody? Short week for me, by the way. I'm gonna warn everybody. I'm gonna do a show today. I'm gonna do a show tomorrow, and then I'm gonna take a little mini vacation through the July 4th weekend. Then I'm gonna be back for a week, and then I'm gonna take a real week off before we get to the good stuff, training camp. So I'm just warning everybody. This is what July looks like for me.
I mean, there's not like there's anything happening in these months, anyways.
No.
Like
No.
this is the actual sports dead part of the calendar.
Yeah. Van Pelt's got it right. I saw he just shuts it down for like 6-7 weeks and is like, I'll see you at football.
Yeah.
I don't know how ESPN lets him do it, but I golf clap to you, sir, for pulling that one off. Because that's a really good idea because there is literally nothing going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, the most newsworthy thing that's going to happen during like the All-Star break, did you see the ESPYs will have Shane Gillis hosting for that?
That'll be good. That'll be good. Yeah.
Like for once, even I was like, all right, I might tune in for that one because I don't know what that dude's gonna say. So even I was kind of like, okay, you guys get it now. Like no one's watching, so just be good enough and someone will start watching. So
yes, you'll need to have a couple of viral moments and he will give them to you.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
I feel bad in advance of who his victim is. I don't know who his victim is. It's going to be somebody. It's coming.
Yes, correct.
All right. So we're in makeup time, like make things up zone. So today's makeup zone is the one question I have for every NFC team as we are 3 weeks away from the start of training camp. At least give me credit for trying and thinking because nothing's going on right now. I'm actually going to get to LeBron in a little bit. I think he's trying to vie for a trade. So I will get to him in a minute. All right. I'll get to him in a minute. But let's start with the football. We're literally 3 weeks away, July 22nd. So a little more than 3 weeks, 22 days away from the start of training camp, even less for the rookies to come in. And that's when I get my sports life back. So that'll be nice. And we'll do that again. Here's what I'm looking at. We'll do the NFC East last, obviously. Here's what I'm looking at around the league. And I had a note for everybody because not that I think the Saints are going to be really good this year or a couple of others, notable others that I think are really going to vie for much this year. But off of what Minnesota and Washington did last year, I think you just can't discount anybody anymore. I mean, one was 14-3 and the other was 12-5, and nobody had them anywhere near anything like that. So you just kind of never know. All right. So NFC West, let me start with these two. Does San Francisco get its D back? I'm getting a lot of it. Robert Saleh's back there. They're getting a lot of hype and hope. That's where he went from when he went to the Jets and everything went sideways on him there. He goes back to them. Everything you read about them has a lot to do with staying healthy and him being back and their defense being back. So if that happens, then they're a contender again, actually. I think they lost a few too many people, and they're getting a little long in the tooth at some other spots. But I'll hear it out that if he gets them back to being competitive or better than that, top 10 defense, watch out. Bounce back year for San Francisco this year.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be the key for them because we kind of saw it last year. Brock Purdy can't handle, carrying everything for that team, right? Scoring 30, 40 points a game because the defense is out of whack. I'm with you. I just think they've lost a little bit too much, but it remains to be seen. Lynch and Shanahan, they actually do a really good job with personnel. I just think they've had some misses as of late. They deserve the benefit of the doubt to get that team right. Also, I think we all kind of know, I know you said defense, but if McCaffrey ends up being healthy, that elongates drives. It makes their lives really easy on offense. If he gets going, makes the lives on their defense get a little bit better too. They play really good complementary football when everybody's healthy. And so I would say he's kind of the linchpin of the whole thing though, because we kind of saw it last year. They could not really get much going without him. They could not finish games off without him. I think he's actually going to be the key for them this year.
For Arizona, they got better last year. Now, whether it's good enough, I don't know. And it always boils down to me because Kyler Murray's got the talent to be really good. Does he want to be? And has the take the bus guy gotten through to him now in year 3 to kind of wake him up that it's now or never in your career? I mean, you've been around long enough now. You got to make a choice. And they got Marvin Harrison, who should be a stud on this team now. They're better on defense than they've been, probably through Gannon. I actually am more impressed with him than I thought I would be because he seemed odd, but it's worked out. So my question for them is, annually every question for them. What is Kyler Murray? Is he ever going to be not just a really fun watch, but someone who actually gets better and becomes great because he has the talent to do it? And if it's not going to happen now in year 3 of his second coach, then I'm going to guess it's never really going to happen.
Kyler Murray, to me, is in the same tier as Trevor Lawrence. Has shown some talent. Both franchises decide to hand them the keys, hand them the giant contract, and they're not good enough to warrant said contracts, honestly. And I think Kyler's the same way. I think we've seen enough from Kyler that we know who he's going to be. He's not going to be great. He's going to have great moments. I'll give him that. Like, when he's back there scrambling, I mean, he has some Mike Vick moments that make you go, whoa, but he's never that consistent. And he's got a pretty good offense now. He's got one of the best tight ends in the league, along with Harrison, too. It all boils down to him. And kind of like you said, too, you're in your second head coach, year 3 of that one. If it doesn't work out now, when will it actually end up working?
Yeah, I agree. All right. Other 2 teams out there. Have the Rams grown up fast? Meaning they were very, very young on defense a year ago. And if they're able to show some maturity on that side of the ball with Stafford back, Devontae Adams now paired with Puka Nacua, good offensive line, then they're dangerous again. And they're not playing in our division. So they're dangerous again. And if the Niners question isn't answered and their defense is average and Purdy can't carry people and they can't stay healthy, et cetera, I have a hard time seeing anybody beat them for that division. So if their defense gets better fast, watch out. They're dangerous.
Yeah, I think the Rams are going to be the winners of this division. I just like their makeup. They went from FM picks to being one of the best teams to find guys to fill out their roster and be good and be young. I think people are, kind of sleeping on the Adams signing too. Like, I think you always got to watch out for the guy that's played for a couple bad franchises, then gets the good quarterback to play with and the stable situation to play with that always flips things around. Yeah, I think the Rams are the favorite to win this division. And until proven otherwise, kind of like we mentioned with San Fran, they get the benefit of the doubt because of personnel. The Rams have constantly been finding new personnel, like so much so, that they were moving on from their older guys in the last 2 years. Whenever you're doing that, it means you're doing something right.
Yeah. For Seattle, Darnold? I mean, I think that's just the lingering question for them the whole year. Like, why did you do that? And I know he had a great year with Minnesota. It doesn't mean it's going to be replicated in a new system. I don't think you're right. There's no KOC disciple there, right? Running it. So I don't think I get it. Like, I don't know what, listen, I think Gino's a very good player. I think you can upgrade from him. I don't know that it feels like a downgrade, honestly. And so I think that's just the thing that lingers the whole year over them. Why? And if he doesn't lead them to the playoffs, everyone's going to be like, why did you do that? It doesn't make any sense.
What I will say is this, say what you want about the personnel of the moves. What I will say is the actual asset management part of this, I've come to really like. You traded Gino for a couple of picks, then just signed Darnold. How many times in the NFL do you and I kind of scoff at a deal because we go, oh God, you got to trade for the guy and sign him? They kind of just made a lateral move at quarterback, in my opinion, where they got a couple mid-round picks, got a second, I think, for the Gino trade, and then just went and signed Darnold for nothing, right? So not nothing money-wise, but didn't have to trade for him. I like the asset management part of it. Are either of those quarterbacks the answer? I don't know. That's where I've landed on this. But as time has gone on, I actually haven't hated their kind of mini reset too. Like, did they probably want to trade DK Metcalf? No, but this is what's happening here too, where you didn't want to have to sign the guy, then not compete, whatever. This kind of soft little reset for them in terms of asset management. I don't hate. They're going to have to grin and bear it this year, most likely. Then.
Yeah, probably. I agree. I think this is a strange year for them. All right, NFC South. I think the big question is, can Baker repeat what he did in 2024? And really what's been over the last couple of years, he's had a total career revival. He's turned into one of the most prolific quarterbacks, kind of quietly down there. They're the consistent team of that division. They make the playoffs practically every year. They've been doing it even without Tom Brady as their quarterback, just re-signed their head coach and GM to extension. So they like what they're doing. They're one of the best homegrown teams that's been made. They draft really well. They sign their guys. They're very dangerous. I think because they're coming out of that division, they could end up being a 1 seed. Like that actually wouldn't totally shock me, or a 2 seed, something like that. That wouldn't totally shock me if they end up that way. If Baker's going to repeat this, and I ask it because the offensive coordinator is gone again. He's now the head coach in Jacksonville. If they can repeat this again, the step up for them, it's right there. I mean, it is literally right there. They're the most underrated contender, I think, in the whole conference.
No, I 100% agree with that, especially because they made the playoffs the last 4 seasons. Yes, that goes back to Brady, but Baker's been a part of that now. And you got to look at their playoff history, too. It's not this insane, like, failure. They were a possession away from taking out the Lions, right, to go to the NFC Championship game against the 49ers. Then the Commanders beat them on the last play of that game this year, right? So it's not like they were not blown out by any means. They've actually been good in the playoffs, and because of the division, they always have a home game. So I'm with you, actually. Like, I think they're actually a very good team that will make the playoffs because of how that division is going. They're the only consistent one going. And honestly, like you said, too, they constantly find players as well and, like, kind of churn that roster over. And it's never like this big panic because they constantly are finding guys to finish out that roster. I really like the Buccaneers. I think they're going to easily be in the playoffs. It's just going to be where are they seated, essentially.
New Orleans is one of the few teams I just can't make a case for. I don't think they have a quarterback. Maybe the second round pick turns out to be something that's okay. I don't love all of their personnel anymore. They've made a lot of changes around it. I thought that they were somewhat competitive by the end of the year. Kellen Moore takes this job. I think he's got a bad team. Tell me they're not tanking, because there's every reason for them, of all teams ever. Arch Manning's going to come out. His granddad is Archie Manning. Archie Manning had a long, prolific, not successful because they didn't win very much, but prolific career with the Saints. I mean, if there was ever this is the guy we want to be our quarterback, it's this. Obviously, you can't make anything be a certainty. The Dolphins supposedly were tanking for Tua a few years ago and then got him with the 5th overall pick. He didn't even go number 1. So we don't know what's going to happen with Arch in his career. And we don't know if New Orleans is going to be bad enough to be the number 1 pick. But explain to me that you're not tanking, because I believe that you are.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this too. I think New Orleans is hiding it until the deadline rolls around. Like, who do they unload?
That's right.
Because what's going to happen here is, I think the NFL's actually gotten this correct in how teams act. I don't think teams necessarily tank on purpose, like they go into the season like that. But once they start to lose, you start to sell off the parts. And so I think that's what we're going to find out. How much are they willing to move? What's the salary that they want to move? Like, do they start clearing the decks on their salary cap? Because it's been a mess for 10 years now, their salary cap. I'm interested to see how they handle that. I think they're tanking, but I also think they're going to do what the Browns are doing. They're like, here's 3 young quarterbacks. If any of them work out, that's gravy to us. But if they don't, we're going to go ahead and draft one next year because we're going to be just that bad. Them in New Orleans are the two, or them in Cleveland are the 2 teams that I look at and I go, you guys are tanking. You're just not saying it out loud. But you're also doing it in a way of, we're taking 3 different swings with 3 different quarterbacks. Let's just see if any of them are worth keeping around.
Watch Chase Young. If he's having a good year again, when we get close to the deadline, pass rushers are at a premium in moments like that. So if he's having a year like he was having in the back half, because they re-signed him, he could be a flippable part. So watch Chase Young around the deadline this year. All right. Let's see. Carolina. Is Bryce ready? I actually really thought the hiring of their head coach, first time in a while that the owner I thought did something really, really right. They hired Dave Canales. He's been a quarterback whisperer. He's the one that turned around Geno. He's the one that turned around Baker Mayfield. So they bring him in there, and I felt like it was the right thing to do. Find out if Bryce Young can play. You've got to get a quarterback coach in here to find out if he can play. By the second half of the season, he actually looked pretty decent, looked closer to the collegiate player. His size is always going to be a problem. I think his arm strength's always going to be a problem. It was his accuracy that was really the difference for him, his feel for the game and his accuracy. He gets that back. The players they have on defense add up to what should be something very competitive. So if Tampa's just off by a little bit, which I don't think they will be, New Orleans is not trying to be really good. I'll get to Atlanta in a second. They have a path to a second place in that division. I mean, they really do. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting with Carolina is, can they get over the hump? They were really competitive with teams last year. They were going toe-to-toe with, the Eagles, even the Cowboys, the Chiefs, Remember there was that game against Kansas City and it was in Carolina and they were going toe to toe with them. Can they get over the hump? Like, you know how this is. Most teams actually, like, when it comes to the hierarchy, no one's really tiers and tiers and tiers better than another team. It's the NFL. Things are actually way closer than it seems. If they can't get over that hump, do they make another head coaching change? Is Bryce actually going to answer some of those questions? Also, I think it all boils down to them too. Does their owner actually let things play out too? Because we've seen it every single year since he's owned that team. He doesn't have the patience. He does something crazy every single year. I think those are the questions that are overarching with that team. I really liked their second half last year. Does he kind of let that whole team marinate though for another year? And I don't know if he will, even if their record isn't that good.
And for Atlanta, I mean, I totally get why Michael Penix is the starter now. I mean, he was a top 10 pick. There's a lot of buzz about him. I loved him coming out of college. I think he's the right choice over Kirk. How they handled the Kirk thing since then is utterly ridiculous, that he's still on their roster making that kind of money, that they got nothing back for him, nothing. And so that's crazy. But with Penix, with those skill position people, specifically Bijan, who, could emerge as, top three, maybe already is, top three running back where he's a dominant player. If their defense is a little bit better, it's a defensive head coach. They spent a lot of assets and draft picks on defense. If it's a little bit better, and Penix becomes the accurate player he was in college with some experience, watch out. I mean, like, their offense could turn a corner fast if he's going to be a really accurate passer. So I need to believe it, to see it. I need to see it to believe it, really. But I don't put it past them that Penix is really good, and they are a kind of rocket ship up with him at the quarterback.
I think they have the most potential, like the boomer bust potential, essentially here. Like Tampa's very, very consistent, right? Especially even with, going from Brady to Baker, essentially. With Atlanta, if Penix starts to be successful, that skill position group can stay together for a little bit. If that defense improves, same thing. They can play complementary football a little bit. We need to see it from Penix. I liked what I saw so far, but we need to see that he can actually be good. And I think there's just some questions about some of the skill position guys too, though. Like, you just went through that whole thing. You didn't mention Kyle Pitts. And, we've been waiting for him to blow up. He was in trade talks this offseason. They've got to start moving off of some of these pieces a little bit, too, if they don't start working out as well. I think there's a lot of questions about their personnel of, are you actually going to, put up some numbers and be around for a little bit? I think one of the craziest things that happened was Kyle Pitts is always in all these conversations, yet what did we see last year? Brock Bowers emerged as one of the best tight ends in the league right away with a very bad quarterback situation. So I think for them, they've got to answer some personnel questions now that they have a quarterback that is competent as well.
I agree. NFC North, I love Detroit's roster. I love how they play. I think you're going to find out a lot about Dan Campbell again this year. Very rarely do you lose both coordinators in the same offseason and come back and you're the same. So 15-2 ain't happening again. The question is, how good is it going to be? And in an extremely competitive division, do they get passed by somebody, even if it's just for a year, like a gap year, because they got to get everything back in order? Do one of the other three teams pass them? So for Detroit, I would just say this, I expect them to have a good record because they have the offense they have, albeit it's not going to be functioning under the same offensive coordinator anymore. But there are going to be some days where they just run laps around people because they're just kind of too good. But is it good enough to have the type of record that they have? I won't believe it. So that would be my question about them. Can they just get over losing two coordinators? I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't like the combination of things that have happened. Like, if one of these things had happened, I would not be as worried. But they've lost offensive linemen. Goff, who was very good under Ben Johnson. He's lost Johnson now. I think that's always kind of a thing. If you're not an elite quarterback and you found that match with the offensive coordinator, it remains to be seen whether you're going to produce as well. And then, that team ended up relying on the offense last year because of the injuries on defense, and Goff fell apart under pressure. And yes, that's last year, but how do you not have that creep into your mind now that if you need to rely on that guy, he's not going to throw a pick six, right? So I think they've got some work to do. I'm with you. They're not winning 15 games. I just think they're going to have some adversity here because they haven't had to do that in a little bit. And there's just going to be too many changes for them not to have a little bit of a rough patch. I think Campbell will get them through it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But like, I think they're going to have a rough patch in the middle of the season.
Yeah, there are two things that can get you. There's changes where you have to adjust to it, and there's health. And that's where the Packers come in. I think they are wildly underrated coming into this season, like wildly underrated. We did that thing. Sam Fortier did that piece last week in the Washington Post where he asked the question, which I think is a fair question. How much was luck playing into what the Commanders did? Like, how many times could you convert on fourth down? How many times could you win on the last play from scrimmage? Like, that can't continue, right? You know, you ask this question, and in that piece buried in there, the quote unquote unluckiest team of 2024 was the Packers, based on just dropped passes, all the things that you can't really factor in. And then don't forget, their quarterback got hurt in their opener, missed time, was never really healthy throughout the year. They were in the playoffs anyway, and were in as physical a football game as we've ever seen in that playoff game against Philadelphia. They get Jordan Love back healthy. Remember, at the end of the season 2 years ago, they were cooking people, like including that one where they just blew out Dallas, like in the playoffs at home. It was like the funniest thing I've ever seen. They were cooking people. They were not healthy last year, specifically a quarterback. So let's say that turns. They're wildly underrated, in my opinion. Like, nobody's talking about them. People are acting like Jordan Love didn't play the way he played at the end of a year and a half ago. So watch out for them.
I think it's a valid question, though. Can Jordan Love play as good as he did in that stretch? Because he was an MVP candidate that second half of the season.
Right.
So he needs to play that way again. And I don't have doubts that he can't, but you do need to show that. And I know he was banged up last year. I think the other side of this too, though, is what everybody kind of always asks with the Packers. Are there skill position players good enough to complement him? Because I think we're looking at Jordan Love. Is he as good as Aaron Rodgers was? I don't think so. Not yet, at least. And if he has a kind of same kind of position, skill position players, can he get through with them not being as good as him? I think that's where the question lies. I'm with you. They weren't healthy last year, still made the playoffs in that tough division. That was a pretty good year for them for everything that they went through. I just think I need to see it from Jordan Love a little bit more for me to actually have some confidence.
Yep. The Bears are Ben Johnson's in. He installs the offense. Caleb needs to show the potential in this offense. No more excuses. They're like us from 10 years ago. They're winning the offseason, right? They're winning the offseason. Sure. I think that, their fan base is triggered real fast about everything these days. Like they feel like us a little bit from back in the day. Very triggered,
yes.
triggered by everything. Everything triggers them. They got to be right. It's got to be right. So I think it's too much pressure in year one with Ben Johnson, but I don't put it past them because I think Caleb is super talented. I think the roster they have is good enough to be extremely competitive. I think they're kind of in the wrong division, but I'm willing to hear it out that they're a playoff team because of how much talent they have out there.
They should have the same mindset, Bears fans, not the Bears personnel. Bears fans should have the same mindset that we had at the beginning of last year. You know what this year's about? Is Caleb the guy, right? I thought he showed enough last year that he looks like a proper NFL quarterback. What's his ceiling? I don't know, but you need to see if he's going to be the stud, the number one overall pick, that he's the guy moving forward, because otherwise, you know how this works. You're going to have to play out the string, and then it's going to be, do you extend him? All of a sudden your franchise is going to be set back. There's no excuses for him. I can't believe we've gotten to this point already, but it's year two. They have a genius offensive coordinator. They revamped the offensive line. They have all these skill position players that just about any other quarterback would want. Is he the guy or not? That's what they need to do. And Caleb didn't help himself with the whole entire story of him trying to maneuver himself out of Chicago, essentially. Right. And I know he walked it back and he said what he needed to say. You know how this works. This pops back up if he ends up sucking this year. So I think this is a, put up or shut up type move for Caleb. And if they can compete in that division, good for them. But I also just think, I don't know if they'll be able to put it together quicker than the other teams in that division, because they've all been way more consistent than they have at this point.
The bet of the offseason is what the Vikings did. Like, they could have brought Darnold back. They did not. They could have had Aaron Rodgers. It's been very obvious that they could have Aaron Rodgers. They chose not to do that. I bet you if they called Atlanta and said, look, we'd like to get Cousins back here for the year, Atlanta would have done it. And so they chose JJ over all three of those. So they're putting an unproven, I know they used a first round pick on him. They're putting an unproven quarterback on a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. It is the bet of the offseason, I think, by anybody. Because it's not like they were forced into this. They had 3 viable, 2 of them obviously viable other options in re-signing Darnold or getting Rodgers, who clearly wanted to go there. They could have had either one of them. They chose not to do that. This is the biggest bet of the offseason by anybody who I think is a contender.
This is the biggest gamble period of the NFL offseason. Having a team that won 14 games and then moving off of Darnold and then moving to a rookie quarterback that didn't even practice, right? Was hurt in the preseason last year. Wasn't even handling the clipboard last year. This is the biggest gamble of the offseason. But what I will say is this. I like that a team like the Vikings just went, screw it. We drafted this guy. Look at all the other rookies that got drafted last year. We need to see if he's the guy or not. I don't mind this decision. And if it doesn't work out, then yes, maybe they do call up Atlanta and Kirk comes back there. But at the same time, I'm a sink or swim guy with these rookie quarterbacks. Rookie quarterback contracts now are so important. They're basically saying, we need to see if this guy is it. And I know we have a ready-made roster. Maybe the defense helps them out a little bit. Because I like what they did on defense, too. Like, they signed John. They signed a couple other guys. I think they upgraded their defense pretty well.
NFC East, when does Dart play? That's what I want to know. I'm assuming it's not week 1 when we play him. I'm sure Russ will win the job, at least for then. And then, considering the hot seat that the coach and GM are on, I think they want to play this out a little bit. They probably don't want him to play until mid to late in the season. And then you don't get enough of a view, and it forces the ownership to give them another year together. I mean, that's how I feel like this is going to play out. So I don't think we're going to see Dart in week 1. And then, the Giants, listen, on paper, their defense looks actually formidable, especially up front. If you go look at the front, go show me a team that's got as many talented Pro Bowl caliber players up front and add in what might be the best defensive player in the draft to it. Like, they're scary looking actually up front. So don't get too upset if Washington wins 20-17 in week 1 and freak out about it, because defensively they should be good. This is like the Patriots a year ago, though. They look like they have a really good defense, but if the offense can't do nothing, the defense might get bored or upset at some point. We'll see how it kind of plays out. But that's the Giants question to me. When does Dart play? And I'm assuming it's not early.
Yeah, I mean, what's funny, too, here is I was reading, there was like an NFC East roundup on ESPN that was Keim, Tim McManus, Jordan Renan, and Todd Archer, right?
Yeah.
So 4 guys that we, of course, talk to all the time. And they actually asked this question to all 4 of them. What does the quarterback on your team have? Like, what does he have to prove this year? And Russ's was actually pretty good from Jordan. And he basically just said, and I agree with Jordan, was that, everyone's just assuming Jackson Dart's going to play at some point. He's like, it's a reminder that this is Russ's last chance to really be viewed as a starter anywhere. Like, whether it's going to be with the Giants or someone else, he kind of just laid out that he's not going to let Jackson Dart come in all willy-nilly. He's going to work his ass off to stay the starter of the team. And so I know Dart's going to play at some point, but I actually think it's going to happen later than you think, because I bet you it's not going to be something that Russ really kind of lets happen. Russ has said out loud, too, he wanted to sign there because of Malik Neighbors, right? So, he actually, I think he's got a chance here to stave off Dart a little bit here as well. Also, you and I talked about this when they drafted him. I don't believe in Dart either. So is he going to make enough of an impact that he's going to warrant starting? I think it's an interesting prospect here, but we also know that's what's going to save Dayball's job at this point, is whatever they have in Dart.
I think there's a ton of questions in Dallas, but Dak coming back healthy. We're getting the offseason pictures of him like he's in the greatest shape of his life. I guess I will center it there, because I think Jaden's the best quarterback in the division. Dak could be the second best quarterback. If Dak plays to his abilities, they're extremely dangerous. So I think there's a lot of questions about Dallas, but Dak and where he is in his career, how healthy can he stay, is probably the biggest of all of it.
No, I agree 100%. It's funny is Dak has no pressure, right? He's not going to lose his job because of the contract that he was just handed. There's a very good question here with Dak. If he's not going on a deep playoff run with this roster, when is he? Because the Cowboys offense is sneaky good right now. When has there ever been as good of a wide receiver as Pickens across from CeeDee Lamb? There hasn't been.
I agree. I don't know that they have a running game still. I think that they're I said there's a lot of questions about them. Yeah.
They have a good offensive line. I know it's gotten older, but it's good enough. They've drafted offensive line the past 2 years in the draft. Like, I'm just saying, Dak doesn't have any excuses anymore. Like, this was the year too where Dallas, they didn't do what they did last year, where they were going, oh, we're going all in, and then proceeded to not go in at all. This offseason, I actually feel like they've made some moves here. So I just think if he's not going to go on a deep run with this roster, when is he?
For the Eagles, will they have a top 5 D again? Because they did have that last year. And they lost a bunch of people. They didn't really replace many of them. They're doing it through the draft or through guys who they said just need more playing time now. You'll see, because they were behind these other players. So let's see. And I trust Fangio that they'll be good. I did also see that Saquon said that the Commanders and Cowboys did not contact him after he was available. And that's why he goes BTA on them, which was like, okay. Fair enough. Gotcha. Okay. You're already doing that to us when you were with the Giants. So like we don't need any more motivation out of you with us. We've already heard enough out of you. That's the big question for the Eagles for me, though. Are they actually like a top 5 defense again? Because if they are, then they are the best team still in the NFC or the NFL.
I think with their defense, they're going to be kind of the same thing I talked about with some of the other teams. They're going to just go through a period of adversity because those are some young pieces that are going to be playing on that team. I think they'll be fine. I think they'll be top 10 still, maybe not top 5, but top 10 still. They're kind of too good to fail is how I feel with the Eagles at this point. They're going to have a weird 3 or 4 week stretch because they're the Eagles. They do that every single year now. Sirianni loses the locker room for a month, and then they all kumbaya and get back together and they read on the sidelines again. So they're going to have some adversity, and mark that, because when it happens, I'm just going to stay chill during the whole thing. They'll be fine at the end of the day.
And for the Commanders, I actually think the biggest thing is how they're going to handle the fame. Is there's just a lot of attention on them. There just really hasn't been, and it's for the first time in a long time, warranted attention. So we could pick out anything. Do they have a pass rusher? Is the offensive line going to be what they think it is? Is Debo going to bring, to the offense what they hope he's going to bring? Can Lattimore stay healthy? There's a lot of questions about them. But I actually think it's just in totality, how are they going to handle, as Dan Quinn likes to call it, the roller coaster? Because they're already up here. So let's see how they handle it this year.
I think that's both nationally and locally. Yeah. You know how this works. Like, guys can't grocery shop because people come up to them. I don't think we've had that happen with this team in 10, 15 years, essentially, because things fell off so hard. Everyone knows what all these guys look like. Jaden Daniels is not just one of the, biggest superstars in the league. Everyone wants to talk with him. Everyone, wants to get his autograph at Fanatics Fest or whatever. I think it's both sides here too. Locally, these guys, it's going to be like old school where how can you even go to a restaurant without being recognized? That's not going to happen anymore. I'm with you. How do they handle kind of all this? Because this is a different feel than it's been, like I said, in 10, 15 years.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let me take a quick break. Who wants to show us be at 6:30, the Sports Capital? All right, welcome back. Let's get into the NBA for a minute. LeBron James signs or picks up his player option, which was like $52 million for one more year to play with the Lakers. Rich Paul, his very powerful agent, puts out some very cryptic-y type of statements saying, I understand that the Lakers want to build around their youth, but we want him to win a championship. He still wants to compete. There is he called the Lakers and them good partners for him. So it was really cryptic the way he talked about it, which to me read like, I think he wants to be traded. I think. He didn't say that because it's very possible he'll still stay in LA because he don't want to be traded to anybody. He probably wants to be traded to a very, very select few teams. They may or may not want him. They may or may not have what the Lakers want to trade him. So they're all being very coy about how they're saying everything. But that was my read on it, that he picked this up because he wants them to trade him. That's what I think it meant to me.
It's one extreme or the other. He either wants to be traded or he is actually retiring. Because his normal move would be to sign the bigger extension, not do this option thing. He would agree to sign it and make more money. But I also think what happened here too, and you can hear me out, what was all the chatter last week about all the moves that were made? All these teams trying to get out from the second apron, right? Yeah. That became all of a sudden a phrase that we all had to become familiar with.
Yeah.
I think this was the Lakers maybe he did want that legitimate extension, and them probably going, I don't think we want to sign that. Like, I think it was them finally broaching the subject of, you're a little too expensive for us to actually spend this. And they just sold, right? So they're probably watching the books a little bit more. I think this is them kind of going, we kind of want out of the LeBron business. We don't want to pay as much as we used to. And LeBron's going, are you kidding me? I'm LeBron. And so the opt-in essentially says, I'm either retiring or move me because you don't want to sign me to that 2 or 3 year extension that is worth 150 million or whatever the number is at this point.
Why would they? He's 40 years old. Why would, I mean,
correct. He's LeBron. Don't get me wrong. He's one of the GOATs, but like, he's turned into a very, 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 very good role player. Like, I love the way he plays still. He doesn't play 40 minutes a night, but when he plays 25 to 30, he still plays really hard. And I commend him for that. But is he worth $50 million to be doing that? I don't know. Because if he sells the merch, and sells the jerseys and people come to see him, maybe. But the Lakers could just be making a legit personnel decision here too that kind of is forcing them to release a statement like that.
I mean, the exits for legends are always really tricky. They really are. So, and he's no different. His is starting to get really awkward, though. I mean, this was an odd, like, to your point, this was an odd thing to do, to not force an extension out of him. Well, they probably don't want to give it to him, and I kind of don't blame them, right?
Right, me too.
Like, they have the building block young superstar now. So I'm sure they'd like to build something around Luka now, which is going to be very hard to do while he's still there. He's 40 years old. He's still one of the greatest players ever. Time is passing him by, though. He seems not to want to truly acknowledge that. And there's a selfish level to him that's very different than many, like, they all are. I mean, Rodgers, I think Rodgers came around with this Pittsburgh thing where he's been humbled a little bit by the experience that he's had because his ego got in the way, I think, with a lot of the decisions that he made. Brady probably would have played things out in New England, but him and Belichick went sideways, and so someone had to do a mic drop, and I think he ended up going where he didn't want to go, won anyway. Like, very rare does that happen. I don't think he wanted to go there. I think he won anyway. There's a million stories of other legends that it's not, none of it seemingly ends very, calmly for many of them because they want to go out their own way. But I think sometimes they don't even know how to do that. The dismount for Aaron Rodgers is like the prime example of this. Brett Favre, too. It was the same thing for him. The dismount was off. They just didn't know how to do it gracefully, or they weren't done playing, but the teams have to move on at some point in time. And his feels like it's falling into this category. There's no way he's going to agree to be traded to anywhere but a whatever select couple of teams that he'd be willing to go to. If I were the Lakers, I've said this for a couple years, I would facilitate it because I think they need to get out of this business. You're the Lakers. He's a great, but you've had many greats throughout your organization, and you'll have many more because you're the Lakers. It's time to move on. So I'm not sure where this is going with him, but my read was I think he wanted to be traded, and maybe I think if he said I'm signing this and I'm playing one final year, I think that would have been one thing, but he did not say that.
Sure.
All he said was I'm signing this. So, I'm hoping we don't have a weird dismount with Ovechkin here. He's going to play next year, then his contract is up. And I don't think we're going to have a weird problem, but you never know how he's going to feel at the end of the year. And then all of a sudden you got to make some choices around it. I think that's what's happening with LeBron right now. I don't think he's part of a championship answer any longer. Not at his price point, not at his age, and not at his level of hubris of how those sun's got to revolve around him. So this is a weird dismount. That's all. And I just I don't know. I got a funny feeling he's not going to be playing in LA this year, that he's trying to maneuver something to get somewhere.
The difference between LeBron and Ovi, though, is Ovi was on pace to score 50 goals last year. You can swallow the other side of his game if he's scoring 50 goals. LeBron ain't doing.
I mean, there's a lot of days he's dragging his legs around. Like,
sure.
I mean,
of course, but there are days where he scores a hat trick too. Like, so I would say LeBron's not averaging a triple double every game. Like, he's on his way out essentially. I'm just gonna point this out. There's one franchise that has a bunch of cap space about to be available and 3 big contracts they can move off the books. I'm just pointing it out. There's only one team that's got that much cap space coming out. So I'm just throwing it out there, just doing the wind horse. Why would they do that? So
You want the Wiz to do the flip the vets? Because there's a lot of that talk right now. Who are you going to flip the vets for?
Sure.
And I don't know. I think this group is committed to going the OKC route, and they're trying to get a bunch of 20-year-olds together, and they're hoping by 25 they'll figure out which ones are good and become their core players. So I see what they're trying to do. Whether it works out or not, I don't know. Because like that will come down to, do you have a Jay, Will, and a Shea? And that's TBD whether this team has either one of those players right now. But they're taking a lot of bites at the apple by bringing a lot of young guys in here. So I don't think the time is now for that. I think this is just going to play out that these guys are either going to get bought out or their contracts will expire, probably bought out because they'll want to try to go to contenders. And then they'll have all this cap room. But I guess you never know. If it's a young-ish player who needs an extension from a team that can't afford all the players, then I think that would be the exception for the Wizards. But I don't think it's to bring LeBron in and sell some tickets.
I think what the move here is, if they were actually going to make a significant move besides unloading for picks or somebody young, is Corey Kispert a part of this core moving forward? I don't know. Like, do they like him enough? Yeah, right. I mean, I feel the same way that you do, but he falls into your typical Wizards. Somebody trades for him and helps put a team over the top. Do you take Kispert, pair him with a veteran, and can you get a significant piece back? That's how I'm feeling about the moves that they make. These veterans will get moved eventually, if not bought out eventually.
Yes.
That's how I feel about it. But I do think you've got a little bit more maneuverability than you think here, especially with a guy like Kispert moving forward.
Yep. All right, let me take a quick break. Bram Watch's show ESPN at 6:30, the Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Last thing today, I noticed this late last week as the Nationals hit the turning point of the first half of the season. Barry Svrluga wrote a piece about them detailing what he thinks about everything that's going on. And there are a few main points that he brought up that are nothing really new. One, the ownership is not spending right now. Do they have a core group of players that are budding together to where Mike Rizzo, as he put it famously, when it's time for me to go into their room and tell them it's time to spend, I will. So will that be this December? I don't really know, because they are having another season that is not great. Now, yesterday, something unusual happened. Their hitter is so ridiculously talented and so scary that a team intentionally walked him 4 times. And the last time that happened was Barry Bonds. So he's already gotten the reputation, do not pitch to this guy. And part of that is because there aren't many other people that can hurt you, and he can. And part of that is he's a monster and they're scared of him. So there are a couple, like he's the primary reason that I think you could look at its team and go, all right, they got somebody here who's going to be an all-star and maybe more. Like he's outrageous. Because a couple of years ago, I kept saying to you, I'm like, I don't see it because I don't know who their star is. Like, yeah, they got some nice players, but I don't know who their star is. He's being treated that way now. So I thought Svrluga on that front was fair about it and just said, they're never going to win if they don't spend any money, but they also haven't had any reason to spend any money the last couple of years. But now we're getting to the point where you might have to.
When the stat came out, not the walk stat yesterday, which was amazing, by the way, because the best comparison with that Bonds stat was Bonds was walked 4 times 20 years ago. He was 39 years old. James Wood is in his 20s, and he got that treatment, which is amazing. But the stat that I loved last week, to kind of put it in a perspective of how good James Wood is, he matched the home run totals of both Bryce Harper and Juan Soto through the first 162 games of their careers. Yeah. They all were within 1 of each other, I think. He was right there with those 2. That tells you everything you need to know about this guy moving forward, that he has the baseline of those 2 superstars who you would have loved to have Bryce Harper back. We all know what happened there if they won a World Series without him. They did win a World Series with Juan Soto. So it tells you, like, if you're Nats ownership, this guy is on the same level as those 2. If you're not going to re-sign this guy, you're going to probably lose the fan base for a long time. And so this is the part where you need to start spending and put guys around him, because this is the guy that now is going to restore the faith if you actually go and spend the money on him.
Now, the other issue is development, right? That's the other part of this, that they've drafted and brought people up, and very few of them have become players that they can count on to be part of a core. Svrluga wrote this about it. The Nationals over the last 10 drafts signed 45 players who ended up making the majors. 6 of them have a career wins above replacement average of 4.0 or greater. A couple of them have been tradable pieces. Lucas Giolito is one of them, who's no longer here. He goes, that's not much of an impact, but look at it the other way. He used an advanced metric where he said of the 45 players, 23 have a career really low, bad advanced metric, less than 0. He said this, which translates to this: more than half the players the Nationals drafted and developed into big leaguers over a decade were worse than a random replacement player they could have called up from the minors. So the development part of this, like, I love that James Wood is here. I think Mackenzie Gore is very good. I think they have a couple of other players. I'm still not sold on Abrams. Like, I think he's a good player. I'm not sure great player. I think there's a couple of other younger guys that, let's see, like I'm willing to see out. Like, they're very young and they just came up, and I don't want to make any judgments about them. Let's see what happens. But on the whole, this is the other issue with them. And I don't, you can't, I guess you could go buy a team, which the learners will not do, right? They want a team and they'll go get a piece for you and go spend a lot of money for it. And on the whole, the draft and development part of this has been woefully bad. So, remember, James Wood is not the guy they drafted. He was part of a trade. So the people they're drafting and developing aren't working out.
No, I mean, that goes back to any of the players you just mentioned. CJ Abrams is actually having a very good season. He probably should be an all-star, but he plays for the Nationals, right? The 3 best players they have are CJ Abrams, James Wood, of course, and Mackenzie Gore. They didn't draft any of them. They got them all in the Soto trade. That's where I'm concerned. Like, I love all 3 of them as pieces moving forward. The biggest concern, though, is you have not had a player like any of them, come through the minors in a long, long time. Like, CJ Abrams reminds me of Ian Desmond in that he's a pretty good shortstop. Will he get a massive extension? I don't know, but I enjoy watching him on a day-to-day basis. So that's my concern here too, is your 3 best players, essentially, you didn't get. And is that because you kind of got lucky and they're all ended up being good, or that the Padres actually draft and develop a little bit better than you do? I think it's probably a little bit of both, but yeah, that's my biggest concern is you can't even fill up your roster with these guys and you have to go sign somebody. And when you don't go sign somebody, it actually end up being worse.
Yeah. All right. We'll talk to y'all tomorrow. Brad Watch the Show, ESPN 630, The Sports Capital.